So if you've ever felt shame and guilt, the shame and guilt that goes along with binge eating, then this episode is for you. Tune in to hear all my, actually, no, not all of my deep, dark secrets, just some of them, and how I actually got to a healthy place with my food instead. So, welcome to Joyful Eating, episode 179. So, today we're talking about how I cured my binge eating, which is something I haven't ever spoken about publicly before. So, here we go. But before we get into the episode, the best bite I had this week was I had new members in my Joyful Cooking group, and this week we were doing my no cook magic meal. And I crowdsourced, we made it together. We did a cook along, live cook along where I got my students to help me choose what to make, and it was just like such a good lunch. I used kale slaw, so it's like this commercial like shredded up cabbage and carrot and kale, like so beautiful, like red cabbage and green kale, and then just some canned tuna in oil, and then this commercial like baba ganoush from a local place that makes like it was so smoky and so eggplanty and so good, and then finished it with some dried cranberries, and it just had that like the sweetness, the smokiness, like had the freshness of the greens. It was so good. So definitely there's more dried cranberries and baba ganoush in my future. But anyway, so plan for today is first I'm going to share with you the story behind this episode on binge eating. And then we're going to look at like what actually caused my binging and then how I cured it. Well, first I'm going to share with you the actually how I cured it, like the long, messy, drawn out process, which I like now knowing what I now know as a coach and someone who has a lot more tools at her disposal. I'll talk through like how I would cure it today. So if I was in that situation again, what I would tell my how I would coach my former self, and the like much kinder, faster process that would be available to me now. And then I have an invitation to you, and then also I'm going to share with you on an unrelated note, an update about my sprint goal this week. So that's our plan. So lots to cover today. So the story behind why I decided to do this episode a couple of weeks ago, I was coaching one of my clients in the Naturally Healthy Club, who's been with me for a while, and uh, we don't talk a lot about binging in the NHC. It has come up a couple of times, but anyway, when I was coaching her, I was just sharing with her my story and what I'm going to share with you today. And then a couple of people had like when they heard that coaching, they reached out to me to say, "Wow, Jules, that was really helpful." Uh, so it's like, okay, yeah, definitely something to include in the podcast. That's why I decided to do an episode on this. And so let's look at like what was life like for Jules when she was binge eating, and basically like what caused my binge eating was I was in my early 30s, and basically I just like my life, I had the worst year of my life. It's still like above and beyond like the worst year ever, right? So what happened, like I was living in the Barossa Valley, so I was working as a winemaker, assistant winemaker, and that wasn't going very well. Like had been a food scientist before, and I was always good at school and good at uni and good at work. And then all of a sudden, I'm trying to be a winemaker, and it's really physically demanding, and I'm not doing a great job at it. No, I wasn't. I was really struggling. So that was one thing that was really difficult. Then at the same time, my marriage of 18 months was breaking up like that's a whole nother story that we don't my deep dive secrets that we don't need to go into, but yeah, you just to know, like, so going through a marriage breakup, career was struggling, and like just I felt like my world was like just closing in on me, and yeah, so like I was going through a really tough time basically, which so many people have those periods of life, and so I didn't have any tools to like be able to cope. And so I found myself turning to food in order just to be able to cope with what was going on. And I didn't have any awareness to what was going on, but I just found myself compulsively eating and just shoving food in my mouth. And now that I look back, I can see what was going on. But at the time, that was it. And I guess the other thing, so that I had a lot of like not good things happening in my life, and I didn't understand why. And then the other thing that was driving it as well was like, just coming from that like, I had that classic, like, dieter mentality of like, seeing food as good and bad and restricting and not giving myself permission to enjoy some of the foods that I really loved. And so like that, like actually, and probably I was, restricting and under eating the amount, like actually not giving my body enough food because the winemaking job was really physically demanding. And so I was trying not to overeat and I wasn't listening to my body. So I wasn't giving myself enough food. So I think there was like the emotional drive to binge, but then there was also like a physical drive to binge as well because my body was needing more food than I was giving it. And so it was finding ways to get it. So those two things combined, like, of course, I was binging. And so that's what caused it. And so the actual process of how I cured it, it took, it was basically like changing my life circumstances. So ended up leaving them, like actually ended up getting the sack from that job. I've shared that story on the podcast when I talk about my alcohol problems. So we don't need to go into that. But yeah, so I was forced to make a change in my career and did try and get in other winemaking jobs, and then just nothing was coming to me. And so I ended up moving back to Sydney and getting a job back in the food industry, working for Kellogg's, which ended up being the best thing ever. So that life circumstance of like changing, going back to a career that I was good at, that really made a big difference. And then also, moving on and navigating, being single again and getting to a better place of acceptance around my romantic situation as well. Like, so as my life circumstances improved, I didn't have this strong desire. Like that definitely reduced the desire to binge, but it still was happening. Um, but like over time, like as my life improved, I was able to get a handle on it and to manage it better. So it probably took, a couple of years, but it got better slowly over time. So that was like but there was a lot of like, back and forth. And I would swear I'm not ever going to binge again. And then of course, like going back and doing it. Um, and yeah, so just like that pattern it took a while to break. And because once I'd like had that habit of when I was feeling blah, just turning to food in that way, it was hard to there was a habitual component to it as well that took some time to unravel. But I got there eventually. Um, so that's the messy how I changed it. But if I was going to like if I was in someone, went back to the future or yeah, and actually like went back to worst year of my life, 2003, then how would I change it today? What would it definitely be a faster and much kinder process because I would understand what's going on. So the first thing that I would tell myself is that I can actually just decide to let go of all the shame and guilt around this binging and actually change the story about what my binging meant to me because what my binging meant about me because I was like first of all doing the actual binging but then also like the self-talk and the stories that I would tell myself about how out of control and how much of a loser I was because I was doing it and just like the feelings that brought up like that was I didn't realize it at the time, but I actually could have just decided that no, like it's actually like that what I was doing made sense on some levels and to have and then the next thing so I could actually decide to stop the feeling shame and guilt and just actually accept that this was where I was at and that yes, it wasn't exactly where I wanted to be in my life, but that that I there was like another option. Like I didn't have to feel all that shame and guilt. I could just feel the disappointment and the like all the like whatever was all the negative stuff that was coming up without adding on that extra layer of pain to myself. So I could first of all save myself a lot of heartache by just deciding that yep, okay, I'm doing this binging, it's not great, but no need to feel shame and guilt. And also like I think now that I know like and I've worked with so many people, just like when you think about it, like as humans, like pretty much everyone at some point uses food in a negative way to avoid some sort of negative emotion because that's how we're raised. Like as babies, we are soothed by the breast or the bottle, and it's like part of our DNA is to be soothed in that way. And so the fact that if we don't have other tools that we turn to food to soothe ourselves, like it makes sense. Like of course that's going to happen. And I think just understanding that kind of evolutionary drive and understanding, like of course if we're denying ourselves and restricting it, that's also going, like our bodies want to be healthy, and so we're under eating, like that's going to drive us to have these binging episodes as well. Like just having that understanding of like, of course this is happening, and then being compassionate around with ourselves around it. Like even if we like you only do that one thing of just being accepting and compassionate with yourself, that goes a long way to healing the whole process, or the whole like pattern, and putting an interrupt into that pattern. But then and then the other thing I would tell myself is like yes, of course you've got all this stuff going on, of course you're turning to food, and just be like compassionate with myself. And then the other thing that I would like teach myself is that actually it's okay. Like you're like it's possible to feel your feelings, like, and that the way through this isn't like eating, and eating doesn't actually, like, it doesn't help you process the feelings, and it just makes the situation worse. And that there is another way, and it's like that I can actually handle it, that I can actually learn to to feel the feelings instead of eating over them. And the cool thing is that when you feel the feelings, yeah, it feels awful in the moment, but it doesn't feel as bad as it feels after you binge. And also it helps you process the feelings. So I would tell myself, yeah, like that there is another way, and I would actually get myself to practice those skills of, and which is like what I've done now, is have that like practice that skill of being able to feel the feelings instead of eating them. And the other thing I would teach myself is like learning how to coach yourself, like learning how to coach myself and learning how to tune into my thoughts, and actually like choose more helpful thoughts, instead of just letting whatever negative thoughts are running the show. And actually giving myself that space of like when I did have the urge to binge, actually putting in a pause, just that little pause of like, oh, do I really want this? Like, is this actually going to help me feel better? And just questioning that desire to binge so that I could, and of course, like giving myself the option to eat something to comfort myself, and give myself that permission to eat rather than just it all being not bad, and like something that you shouldn't be doing. Like actually going, actually, would it feel good to me to eat something right now to give myself that comfort, and doing it in a more manageable way rather than it being like completely out of control. Um, and the other thing, of course, I would do is, make sure that I wasn't restricting, and during outside of like binging times that I was giving listening to my body and letting myself feel satisfied at meal times. So I wasn't actually didn't have the physical hunger driving this desire to binge as well. And the other thing that I would do, so yeah, there's a lot to it, is because that I didn't used to do back then, was like actually giving myself permission to have foods that I saw as bad, on a regular basis. Like, whether that was like, so what I do at the moment is like usually Saturday and Sundays I have dessert. And so, like, I'm having ice cream or I'm baking a cake and giving myself permission to have the cake. So it's not like I'm never enjoying, indulgent foods. And then all of a sudden it's like, I've got this urge to binge. And so, like, I'm like, it's out of control. Like, and that in itself also is a really helpful strategy, because when you go, oh, actually, I can have cake, and it really, it reduces that desire to have those foods that we do tend to binge on. So there's a lot to it, but essentially, like if you're looking for like a first step, like just deciding that it's okay, like, and deciding to stop shaming yourself, and having that self compassion of like, yeah, like of course I'm turning to food because these are my circumstances, and this is my history, and that's okay. Like, and that is like will go a long way to changing. Um, so yeah, but that like, of course it is a complex thing, and there's the habitual component. So there is a lot to unwind there, but just know that if you currently are binging, that it's also, the other thing is like it's not who you are. It's just a way of coping with your current circumstances, and it is possible to change. Like, it isn't something that we necessarily, it isn't a part of you're not broken, and you don't have a character flaw if you are using food in that way. Like, and actually, when I think about it, and it's the more I talk with like clients around it, like pretty much everyone has some form, like has binged at some point in their life, and whether they call it a binge and think about it as a binge, like we've all been there where we've made ourselves sick from eating too much food. And whether that was Thanksgiving dinner or it was something you were doing in secret, like it's really like all humans do it at some point. And so I think like just that thought alone is that I find that really comforting of like, yeah, like I'm not a freak. Like, yeah, of course, like this is something that humans do. It's also something that I can change, and approaching it from a more empowered place is really helpful. So yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot. Jules' deep dark secrets. So yeah, we'll switch gears a little bit because on a brighter note, actually, no, that was a pretty bright note. Like just knowing that there is a way to do things differently, I think is so helpful. But yeah, other thing is the other thing I wanted to share with you this week is uh, so each week I've been setting like a sprint goal for myself. So just like one little goal that I'm focusing on around something to do with health. And this week I have had like seriously the best week I've had in years. And if you look on the surface, it doesn't seem like a really great week. Like it's freezing cold here. Like I was just doing work, like it was like nothing out of the ordinary. But what has been really different is my sprint goal this week was to start um, a new habit uh, of actually tuning in and to myself, of and and just like being more mindful and appreciative of where I'm at. And so the tiny habit that I've been working on this week was like every time I push the button to turn the kettle on, because I drink tea all day, so I do this multiple times a day. Just when I do that, turn the kettle on, I see that little light come on. Just to initially, my thought that I wanted to have was, that I'm cheerful and grateful in every moment, and so just to tune into like think about one thing I'm grateful for. But I actually during the week it kind of evolved into just and this is a thought of mine that I really love is that like I'm so lucky. And when I started thinking like pressing the kettle and I'm thinking, because when I think about gratitude, that's nice and it definitely that's going to feel better. But telling myself I'm so lucky and then thinking about like why am I so lucky? Like what's good in my life? It's just really connected me with like all the amazingness and all the beauty in my life, like even on a like really cold wintry day, like just seeing the beauty in the grays, and just like appreciate even when my boys are fighting, like appreciating the beauty of, yeah, like I'm a mom, I wanted to have these children, and like here they are, like, and just like in these little mundane moments, like actually bringing a little bit of like joy into them by just noticing and thinking about them, like thinking about how blessed I am, like, and that I'm healthy, I'm not, I don't have any like stomach virus, and I'm not vomiting, like there's always something, no matter what's going on in life, like there's always something good that we can tune into. So yeah, I just thought I would mention that this week, that if you have been feeling a bit flat, that, or a bit down or whatever, like that actually you can, like, it's a really fun goal to have, and you don't have to do it with your kettle. You could do it like every time you wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, or like, you know every time you stop at a traffic light, just think of something you're thinking of why you're lucky. And it's like I guarantee it will completely change how you feel about your life and your week, even when the actual circumstances of your life and your week haven't changed at all. Like, it's such a cool little hack. Anyway, so that's it for today. So before we wrap up, just an invitation to you. So if you'd like some help, like healing your own bad food habits, whether that's binging or other things, and creating like your own healthy relationship with food, then I'd love you to join me in the Naturally Healthy Club. So it's my 6-month personalized coaching group which helps you change your relationship with food so you become one of those naturally healthy people who feels in control of what you eat, and also helps you feel better in your body and in your clothes, and gets you to a point where you're enjoying food more than you ever had before, and you also are feeling good about how your body feels. So the next group starting September 2024, and the last group sold out. And I'm actually going to be in a couple of weeks running a free live class to give you just a taste of my unconventional methods and what it's like to be a part of the Naturally Healthy Club and work with me. So to save your spot, just go to thestonesoup.com/events, or click on the link in the show notes and you'll be able to get the details there. So have a fantastic week, and I'll catch you next week.